Continuing Pudd'nhead Wilson by Mark Twain. The jewels of the sheath, but the flashings and sparklings had no charm for his eye. They were only just so many pangs to his heart. I must not say anything to Roxy about this thing, he said. She is too daring. She would be for digging these stones out and selling them, and then, why, she would be arrested and the stones traced, and then the thought made him quake, and he hid the knife away, trembling all over and glancing furtively about, like a criminal who fancies that the accuser is already at hand. Should he try to sleep? Oh no, sleep was not for him. His trouble was too haunting, too afflicting for that. He must have somebody to mourn with. He would carry his despair to Roxy. He had heard several distant gunshots, but that sort of thing was not uncommon, and they had made no impression upon him. He went out at the back door and turned westward. He passed Wilson's house and proceeded along the lane, and presently saw several figures approaching Wilson's place. Through the vacant lots, these were the duelists returning from the fight. He thought he recognized them, but as he had no desire for white people's company, he stooped down behind the fence until they were out of his way. Roxy was feeling fine. She said, "What? Was ye a child? Weren't you in it?" "In what?" "In the duel." "Duel? Has there been a duel?" "'Cause they has. The old jedge has been a-havin' a duel with one of them twins." "Great Scott!" Then he added to himself, "That's what made him remake the will. He thought he might get killed. And it softened him toward me. And that's what he and Howard were so busy about. Oh dear, if the twin had only killed him, I should be out of my... What is you mumbling about, Chambers? What was you? Didn't you know there was going to be a duel?" "No, I didn't. The old man tried to get me to fight one with Count Luigi, but he didn't succeed, so I reckon he concluded to patch up the family honor himself." He laughed at the idea and went rambling on with a detailed account of his talk with the judge, and how shocked and ashamed the judge was to find that he had a coward in his family. He glanced up at last and got a shock himself. Roxana's bosom was heaving with suppressed passion, and she was a-glowering down upon him with measureless contempt written in her face. "And you refuse to fight a man that kicked you, stid o' jumping at the chance? And you ain't got no more feeling than to come and tell me that fetch sich a po down ornery rabbit in the world? Pa, it makes me sick. It's the Negro in you. That's what it is." See, even back then it was, the racism inflicted by people upon their own. 31 parts o' you is white, and only 1 part Negro, and that po little 1 part is your soul. 'Tain't worth saving. 'Tain't worth totting out on a shovel and throwing in the gutter. You has disgraced your birth. What you would, Pa, think of you? It's enough to make him turn in his grave." The last 3 sentences stung Tom. I'm trying to read it out as it's written, into fury, and he said to himself that if his father were only alive in the reach of assassination, his mother would soon find out that he had a very clear notion of the size of his indebtedness to that man, and was willing to pay it up in full, and would do it too, even at the risk of his own life. But he kept his thought to himself. That was the safest in his mother's present state. "Whatever has come o' your excess blood, that's what I can't understand. And it ain't only just Essex blood that's in you, not by a long sight. 'Deed it ain't. My great, great, great grandfather and yo great, 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 great grandfather was old Captain John Smith, the highest blood that old Virginia ever turned out, and his great great grandmother, our Summers along back there, was Pocahontas, the Indian Queen, and her husband was a Negro King out in Africa. And yet here you is a slinking out of a duel and disgracing our whole line like an ornery, low-down hound. Yes, it's the Negro in you. She sat down on her candle box and fell into a reverie. Tom did not disturb her. He sometimes lacked prudence, but it was not in circumstances of this kind. Roxana's storm went gradually down, but it died hard, and even when it seemed to be quite gone, it would now and then break out in a distant rumble, so to speak, in the form of muttered ejaculations, blurrings out, not the other thing. One of these was, "Ain't Negro enough in him to show in his fingernails, and that takes a mighty little. Yet there's enough to paint his soul." Presently, she muttered, "Yes, sir, enough to paint a whole thimbleful of 'em." At last her rambling ceased altogether, and her countenance began to clear, a welcome sign to Tom, who had learned her moods and knew she was on the threshold of good humor now. He noticed that from time to time she unconsciously carried her finger to the end of her nose. He looked closer and said, "Why, Mammy, the end of your nose is skinned. How did that come?" She sent out the sort of wholehearted peal of laughter which God had vouchsafed in its perfection to none but the happy angels in heaven and the bruised and broken black slave on the earth, and said, "Dad fetch that duel, I bein' in it myself." "Gracious, did the bullet do that?" "Yes, sir, you bet it did." "Well, I declare. Why, how did that happen?" "Happened? This away. I was settin' here, kinder dozen in the dark, and chabang goes a gun right out there. I skips along out towards the other end of the house to see what was going on, and stops by the old winder on the old side towards Pudd'nhead Wilson's house. That ain't got no sash in it, but they ain't none of them got any sashes, fur as that's concerned, and I stood in the dark and look out in the moonlight and right down under me, and us one of the twins a cussin', not much, but just a cussin' soft, and us the brown one that us cousin case he us hit in the shoulder, and der Dr. Claiborne, he's us a working at him, and Pudd'nhead Wilson, he's helping in old Judge Driscoll, and Pam Howard is standing and yonder a piece, waiting for him to get ready again, and directly they squared off and give their word, and bang bang went the pistols, and the twin, and he said ouch and hit him on the hands this time, and I hear that same bullet go spat again in the logs under the winder, and this next time they shoot, the twin say ouch again, and I done it too, 'cause their bullet glanced on his cheekbone and skip up here on and glance in the side and the window on the whiz, 'cause of my face and tuck and the hide off my nose. Why, if I'd been just an inch or two and or an inch and a half further toward tuck the whole nose, and this figured me. Here's the bullet. I hunted her up." "Did you stand there all the time?" "That's a question to ask, ain't it? What else would I do? Does I get a chance to see a duel every day?" "Why, you were right in range. Weren't you afraid?" The woman gave a sniff of scorn. "Afraid? The Smith Pocahontases ain't afraid of nothing, let alone bullets. they've got pluck enough, I suppose. What they lack is judgment. I wouldn't have stood there. Well, it's what you've trained. Your character. You're not born. Oh, from this color. That's this family line. And well, if you don't know you're that family line, you don't get that idea in your head that you're gonna. You got pluck enough, I suppose, and what you lack judgment. I wouldn't have stood here. Nobody's accusing you. Did anybody else get hurt? Yes, because we all hit Sep, the blonde twin, and the doctor in the seconds. The judge didn't get hurt, but I heard Pudd'nhead say the bullet snipped some o' his hair off. George, said Tom to himself, to come so near being out of my trouble and miss it by an inch. Oh dear, dear, he will live to find me out and sell me to some Negro trader. Yes, yet. And he would do it in a minute. And then he said aloud in a grave tone, Mother, we are in an awful fix. Roxana caught her breath with a spasm and said, Chile, what you hit a body so sudden for like that? What's been and gone and happened? Well, there's one thing I didn't tell you. When I wouldn't fight, he tore up the will again, and Roxana's face turned a dead white. And she said, Now you's done forever. That's the end. Boff on us is gwine to starve too. Wait and hear me through. Can't you? I reckon that when he resolved to fight himself, he thought he might get killed and not have a chance to forgive me any more in this life. So he made his will again, and I've seen it, and it's all right. But, oh, thank goodness, then we safe again. Safe. And so, what did you want to come here and talk such dreadful... Hold on, I will tell you, and let me finish. The swag I gathered won't half square me up, and the first thing we know, my creditors, well, you know what will happen. Roxana dropped her chin and told her son to leave her alone. She must think this matter out. Presently, she said impressively, You gotta go mighty careful now, I tell you, and here's what you got to do. He didn't get killed, and if you gives him the least reason, he'll bust the will again, and that's the last time. Now you hear me. So, you's got to show him what you can do in the next few days. You's got to be pissin' good and let him see it. You's got to do everything that'll make him believe in you, and you got to sweeten around old Aunt Pratt too. She's powerful strong with the judge, and the best friend you got. Next, you'll go a long way to St. Louis, and that will keep you in your favor. Then you go and make a bargain with them people. You tell him he ain't going to live long, and that's the fact too, and tell him you'll pay him in trust, and big interest too. 10% a month. That's it. Then you take and sell your truck around a little at a time, and pay the interest. How long will it last? I think there's enough to pay the interest 5 or 6 months. Then you's all right. If you don't die in 6 months, that don't make no difference. Providence'll provide. You's going to be safe if you behaves. She bent an austere eye on him and added, And you is going to behave, does you know dat? He laughed, and he said he was going to try anyway. She did not unbend. She said gravely, Tryin' ain't the thing. You's gwine to do it, and you ain't gwine to steal a pin, case it ain't safe no more, and you ain't gwine into no bad company, not even once, you understand? And you ain't gwine to drink a drop, nary single drop, and you ain't gwine to gamble one single gamble, not one. This ain't what you gwine to try to do, it's what you gwine to do. And I'll tell you how I knows it. This is how I's gwine to follow along to St. Louis on my own self, and you's gwine to come to me every day of your life, and I look at you over, and if you fails in one single of them things, I just the one, I take my oath, I come straight down this town and tell the judge, use a Negro and a slave, and prove it. She paused to let her words sink home, and she added, Chambers, does you believe me when I says that? Tom was sober enough now. There was no levity in his voice when he answered, Yes, mother, I know now that I am reformed, and permanently and beyond the reach of any human temptation. Then go long home and begin. Well, at least that's the end of that manner of speaking for the rest of the thing, right? As I said, it's just how it's written. Chapter 15, The Robber Robbed. Nothing so needs reforming as other people's habits. Pudd'nhead Wilson's calendar. Behold, the fool saith, Put not all thine eggs in one basket, which is but a manner of saying, Scatter your money and your attention. But the wise man saith, Put all your eggs in the one basket, and watch that basket. Pudd'nhead Wilson's calendar. What a time of it Dawson's Landing was having. All of its life had been asleep, but now it hardly got a chance for a nod. So swiftly did big events and crashing surprises come along in one another's wake. Friday morning, first glimpse of real nobility, also grand reception at Aunt Patsy Cooper's. Also, great robber raid. Friday evening, dramatic kicking of the air of the chief citizen in the presence of 400 people. Saturday morning, emergence as a practicing lawyer of the long-submerged Pudd'nhead Wilson. Saturday night, duel between chief citizen and titled stranger. The people took more pride in the duel than in all other events put together, perhaps. It was a glory to their town to have such a thing happen there. In their eyes, the principals had reached the summit point of human honor. Everybody paid homage to their names. Their praises were in all mouths. Even the duelist subordinates came in for a handsome share of the public approbation. Wherefore, Pudd'nhead Wilson was suddenly become a man of consequence. Whenever asked to turn for the mayoralty Saturday night, he was a risking defeat, but on Sunday morning found him a made man and success assured. The twins were prodigiously great now. The town took them to its bosom with enthusiasm. Day after day and night after night, they went dining and visiting from house to house, making friends, enlarging and solidifying their popularity, and charming and surprising all with their musical prodigies, and then heightening the effects with samples of what they could do in other directions. Out of their stock of rare and curious accomplishments, they were so pleased that they gave the regulation 30 days' notice, the required preparation for citizenship, and resolved to finish their days in this pleasant place. That was the climax. The delighted community rose as one man and applauded. And when the twins were asked to stand for seats in the forthcoming automatic board and consented, the public contentment was rounded and complete. Tom Driscoll was not happy over these things. They sunk deep and hurt all the way down. He hated the one twin for kicking him, and the other one for being the kicker's brother. Well, don't hate people because of their brother, but now and then the people wondered why nothing was heard of the raider, or why the stolen knife or the other plunder, but nobody was able to throw any light on that matter. Nearly a week had drifted by, and still the thing remained a vexed mystery. On Saturday, Constable Blake and Pudd'nhead Wilson met on the street, and Tom Driscoll joined them in time to open their conversation for them. He said to Blake, "You're not looking well, Blake. You seem to be annoyed about something. Has anything gone wrong in the detective business? I believe you fairly and justifiably claim to have a pretty good reputation in that line. Isn't it so?" Which made Blake feel good and look it, but Tom added, "For a country detective," which made Blake feel the other way, and not only look it, but betray it in his voice. "Yes, sir. I have got a reputation, and it's as good as anybody's in the profession, too, country or no country." "Oh, I beg pardon." I didn't mean any offense. What I started out to ask was only about the old woman that raided the town. The stoop-shouldered old woman, you know, that you said you were going to catch. And I knew you would too, because you have the reputation of never boasting. And well, you've caught the old woman? The old woman. Why sure, you don't mean to say you haven't caught her. No, I haven't caught her. If anybody could have caught her, I could, but nobody couldn't. I don't care who he is. I am sorry, real sorry, for your sake, because when it gets around that a detective has expressed himself so confidently and then, well, sometimes, when cross-dressing wasn't as accepted in society, it was easier to use that as a disguise, but people were actually probably less likely to use that as a disguise to get away with crime. Don't you worry, that's all. Don't you worry. And as for the town needn't worry either. She's my meat. Make yourself easy about that. I'm on her track. I've got clues. That's good. Now if you could get an old veteran detective down from St. Louis to help you find out what the clues mean and where they lead to, and then I'm plenty veteran enough for myself, and I don't need anybody's help. I'll have her inside of a month. That I'll swear to, Tom said carelessly. I suppose that will answer, yes, that will answer. But I reckon she is pretty old, and old people don't often outlive the cautious pace of the professional detective when he has got his clues together and is out on the still hunt. Blake's dull face flushed under this gibe, but before he could set his retort in order, Tom had turned to Wilson and was saying with placid indifference of manner and voice, "Who got the reward, Pudd'nhead?" Wilson winced slightly and saw that his own turn was come. What reward? Why, the reward for the thief and the other for the knife, Wilson answered, and rather uncomfortably to judge by his hesitating fashion of delivering himself. Well, in fact, nobody has claimed it yet. Tom seemed surprised. Why is that so? Wilson showed a trifle of irritation when he replied, "Yes, it is so. And what of it? Yeah, not everyone's going to take money to snitch, it's called, but, some things it's not snitching. If you're just trying to cause problems with police and stuff, then that is. But, oh, nothing. Only I thought you had struck out a new idea and invented a scheme that was going to revolutionize the time-worn and ineffectual methods of the..." He stopped and turned to Blake, who was happy now that another had taken his place on the gridiron. "Blake, didn't you understand him to intimate that it wouldn't be necessary for you to hunt the old woman down? But George, he said he'd have thief and swag both inside of 3 days. He did, by hokey, and that's just about a week ago. Why, I said at the time that no thief and no thief's pal was going to try or pawn or sell a thing where he knowed the pawnbroker could get both rewards by taking him into camp with the swag. It was the blessedest idea that I ever struck." "You'd change your mind," said Wilson, with irritated bluntness, "if you knew the entire scheme instead of only part of it." "Well," said the constable, pensively, "I had the idea that it wouldn't work, and up to now I'm right away. Very well, then let it stand at that, and give it a further show. It has worked at least as well as your own methods, you perceive." The constable hadn't anything handy to hit back with, so he discharged a discontented sniff and said nothing. After the night that Wilson had partly revealed his scheme at his house, Tom tried for several days to guess out the secret of the rest of it, but it had failed. Then it occurred to him to give Roxana's smarter head a chance at it. He made up a supposititious case and laid it before her. She thought it over and delivered her verdict upon it. Tom said to himself, "She's hit it, sure." He thought he would test that verdict now and watch Wilson's face. "So," he said reflectively, "Wilson, you're not a fool. A fact of recent discovery. Whatever your scheme was, it had sense in it. Blake's opinion to the contrary notwithstanding. I don't ask you to reveal it, but I will suppose a case which will answer as a starting point for the real thing I'm going to come at, and that's all I want. You offered $500 for the knife and $500 for the thief. We will suppose, for argument's sake, that the first reward is advertised and the second offered by private letter to the pawnbrokers, and Blake slapped his thigh and cried out, "By Jackson, he's got you, Pudd'nhead. Now, why couldn't I or any fool have thought of that?" Wilson said to himself, "Anybody with a reasonably good head would have thought of it. I am not surprised that Blake didn't detect it. I am only surprised that Tom didn't. That Tom did. There is more to him than I supposed." He said nothing aloud, and Tom went on. "Very well, the thief would not suspect that there was a trap, and he would bring or send the knife and say he bought it for a song or found it in the road, or something like that, and try to collect the reward and be arrested, wouldn't he?" "Yes," said Wilson. "I think so," said Tom. "There can't be any doubt of it. Have you ever seen that knife?" "No." "Has any friend of yours?" "Not that I know of." "Well, I begin to think I understand why your scheme failed." "What do you mean, Tom? What are you driving at?" asked Wilson with a dawning sense of discomfort. "Why, that there isn't any such knife." "Look here, Wilson," said Blake. "Tom Driscoll's right. For $1,000 if I had it." Wilson's blood warmed a little, and he wondered if he had been played upon by those strangers. It certainly had something of that look, but what could they gain by it? He threw out that suggestion. Tom replied, "Gain? Oh, nothing that you would value, maybe. But they are strangers making their way in a new community. Is it nothing to them to appear as pets of an Oriental prince at no expense? Is it nothing to them to be able to dazzle this poor little town with $1,000 rewards at no expense? Wilson, there isn't any such knife, or your scheme would have fetched it to light. Or if there is any such knife, they've got it yet. I believe myself that they've seen such a knife, for Angelo pictured it out with his pencil too swiftly and handily for him to have been inventing it. And of course, I can't swear that they've never had it, but this I'll go bail for. If they had it when they came to this town, they've got it yet." Blake said, "It looks most reasonably, the way Tom puts it." "It most certainly does," Tom responded, turning to leave. "You find the old woman, Blake, and if she can't furnish the knife, go and search the twins." Tom sauntered away. Wilson felt a good deal depressed. He hardly knew what to think. He was loath to withdraw his faith from the twins, and was resolved not to do it on the present indecisive evidence. But, well, he would think and then decide how to act. "Blake, what do you think of this matter?" "Well," Pudd'nhead Wilson, "I'm bound to say I put it up the way Tom does. They hadn't the knife, or if they had it, they've got it yet." The men parted. Wilson said to himself, "I believe they had it if it had been stolen. The scheme would have restored it, that is certain. And so I believe they've got it yet." Tom had no purpose in his mind when he encountered those two men. When he began to talk, he hoped to be able to gall them a little and get a trifle of malicious entertainment out of it. But when he left in great spirits, for he perceived that just by pure luck and no troublesome labor, he had accomplished several delightful things. He had touched both men on a raw spot, and had seen them squirm. He had modified Wilson's sweetness for the twins with one small, bitter taste that he wouldn't be able to get out of his mouth right away. And best of all, he had taken the hated twins down a peg with the community, for Blake would gossip around freely after the manner of detectives, and within a week the town would be laughing at them in its sleeve for offering a gaudy reward for a bauble which they either never possessed or hadn't lost. Tom was very well satisfied with himself. Tom's behavior at home had been perfect during the entire week. His uncle and aunt had seen nothing like it before. They could find no fault with him anywhere. Saturday evening, he said to the judge, "I've had something preying on my mind, Uncle, and as I'm going away and might never see you again, I can't bear it any longer. I made you believe I was afraid to fight that Italian adventurer. I had to get out of it on some pretext or other, and maybe I chose badly, being taken unawares, but no honorable person could consent to meet him in the field knowing what I know about him. Indeed, what was that? Count Luigi is a confessed assassin. Incredible. It is perfectly true. Wilson detected it in his hand, by palmistry, and charged him with it, and cornered him up so close that he had to confess. But both twins begged us on their knees to keep the secret, and swore they would lead straight lives here, and it was all so pitiful that we gave our word of honor never to expose them. Well, they kept that promise. You would have done it yourself, uncle. You were right, boy, I would. A man's secret is still his own property, and sacred, when it has been surprised out of him like that. You did well, and I'm proud of you. Then he added mournfully, but I wish I could have been saved the shame of meeting an assassin on the field of honor. It couldn't be helped, uncle, if I had known you were going to challenge him. I should have felt obliged to sacrifice my pledged word in order to stop it, but Wilson couldn't be expected to do otherwise than keep silent. Oh no, Wilson did right, and is in no way to blame. Tom, you have lifted a heavy load from my heart. I was stung to the very soul when I seemed to have discovered that I had a coward in my family. You may imagine what it cost me to assume such a part, uncle. Oh, I know it, boy, I know it, and I can understand how much it has cost you to remain under that unjust stigma to this time. But it is all right now, and is no harm done. You have restored my comfort of mind, and with it your own, and both of us had suffered enough. The old man sat a while, plunged in thought. Then he looked up with a satisfied light in his eyes, and said that this assassin should have put the affront upon me of letting me meet him on the field of honor as if he were a gentleman is a matter which I will presently settle, but not now. I will not shoot him until after election. I see a way to ruin them both forever. Them both before. I will attend to that first. Neither of them shall be elected, that I promise. You are sure that the fact that he is an assassin has not got abroad? Perfectly certain of it, sir. It will be a good card. I will fling a hint at it from the stump on the polling day. It will sweep the ground from under both of them. There's not a doubt of it. It will finish them. That and outside work among the voters will, to a certainty. I want you to come down here by and work privately among the ragtag and bobtail. You shall spend money among them. I will furnish it. Another point scored against the detested twins. Really, it was a great day for Tom. He was encouraged to chance a parting shot at the same target, and did it. You know that wonderful Indian knife that the twins have been making such a to-do about? Well, there's no track or trace of it yet, so the town is beginning to sneer and gossip and laugh. Half the people believe they never had any such knife, the other half believe they still had it, and have got it still. I've heard 20 people talking like that today. Yes, Tom's blemishless week had restored him to the favor of his aunt and uncle. His mother was satisfied with him too. Privately, she believed she was coming to love him, but she did not say so. She told him to go along to St. Louis now, and she would get ready and follow. And she would get ready. Then she smashed her whiskey bottle and said, "Da now, I's a-gwine to make you walk as straight as a string, Chambers, and so I's bound you ain't gwine to get no bad example out ya mama. I told you you couldn't go in no bad company. Well, you's gwine into my company, and I's gwine to fill the bill. Now then's trot along." And we'll continue another program. The cat does not like the voice.